1. Monarchy, the legacy of blood. A monarchy is a system where a single individual, the monarch, holds the position of head of state for life, usually passed down through a specific family line. In an absolute monarchy, like Saudi Arabia, the ruler holds total power, acting as the executive, legislative, and judicial branches combined. In a constitutional monarchy, like the UK, Spain, or Japan, the king or queen is a symbolic figurehead, while a parliament handles the actual business of ruling. This system relies on tradition and the divine right to maintain order. The flaw? Success is a lottery. You might get a wise philosopher king who elevates the nation, or you might get an incompetent heir who inherited a throne they didn't earn. 2. Socialism, the collective safety net. Socialism is an economic and political system where the community or the state manages the production and distribution of goods to ensure equity. Unlike communism, it often allows for private property, but emphasizes heavy regulation to close the gap between the rich and the poor. It operates on the principle that essential services, like healthcare, education, and utilities, should be treated as human rights rather than commodities. By redistributing wealth through progressive taxation, socialism seeks to prevent the formation of a permanent underclass and ensure that every citizen has a dignified life. While it aims for a level playing field, critics point to the incentive trap. If the state guarantees your resources regardless of effort, the drive for innovation and hard work often stalls. 3. Democracy, the voice of the many. Democracy, famously refined in ancient Athens, operates on the principle that power belongs to the people. Through voting, citizens choose their leaders and influence laws, ensuring that the government is accountable to those it serves. It is designed to protect human rights and provide a peaceful way to change leadership. In a healthy democracy, the consent of the governed is the only legitimate source of power, fostering a society where debate and compromise are the primary tools of progress. However, its greatest strength is also its weakness. It is inherently slow. Because every major decision requires consensus or a majority vote. Constant election cycles often lead to short-term thinking, where politicians focus on projects that show results before the next vote, instead of investing in long-term infrastructure or environmental planning. Furthermore, democracy is vulnerable to the tyranny of the majority, where the needs of smaller groups are consistently ignored. 4. Autocracy, the rule of one. In an autocracy, a single person or a small elite party holds absolute power, unchecked by law or the will of the people. Unlike a monarchy, an autocrat doesn't always need a royal bloodline. They often seize power through military force, populist movements, or clever political maneuvering. In an autocracy, the state's resources are typically directed toward maintaining the ruler's grip on power, often through propaganda, surveillance, and the suppression of any dissent. The danger here is obvious. Without checks and balances, an autocrat almost inevitably slides into a reign of fear and corruption. When a leader is never told no, they lose touch with the reality of their citizens' lives, leading to catastrophic policy failures and human rights abuses. While autocracies can be incredibly efficient at mobilizing resources for massive projects or war, because there is no legislative debate to slow them down, this efficiency comes at a terrible cost. 5. Federalism, the divided power. Federalism is a layered approach to ruling, most famously seen in the United States or Germany. Power is split between a central national government and smaller regional states or provinces. The central government handles big-picture items like defense, currency, and foreign policy, while states manage local laws, education, and public safety. This promotes efficiency in large nations, allowing local governments to tailor rules to the unique cultural or economic needs of their residents without breaking the unity of the nation. The drawback? It can create massive inequality, where your rights or your quality of life change simply by crossing a state border. Federalism also leads to frequent jurisdictional friction, where the central government and regional states fight over who has the final say. 6. Oligarchy, the rule of the few. Oligarchy comes from the Greek for rule by the few. Power isn't held by one person or the whole public, but by a small, wealthy, or militarily powerful elite. While many countries claim to be democracies, critics argue they are de facto oligarchies, where a handful of billionaires, industry titans, or military generals pull the strings behind the scenes through lobbying and campaign finance. In an oligarchy, social mobility is often restricted to those who can buy their way into the inner circle, creating a closed system of influence. In this system, the laws are almost always written by the powerful, for the powerful. Tax codes and property laws are skewed to benefit those already at the top, while the needs of the working class are treated as secondary. Because the ruling elite are often insulated from the consequences of their decisions, they may ignore systemic problems like economic decay until they reach a breaking point. 7. Republic, the rule of law. A republic is often confused with a democracy, but there is a key distinction. In a pure democracy, the majority can vote to take away the rights of the minority. It is majority rule. In a republic, the state is considered a public matter, and a constitution or charter typically protects certain individual rights that no majority can vote away. Leaders are representatives of the people, not masters of them. It is the system of liberty under law, where the government itself is bound by the same rules as the citizens it represents. The challenge of a republic is maintaining the integrity of its representatives. If the people become apathetic or uninformed, the representatives may stop serving the public interest and start serving themselves. A republic requires a high level of civic virtue and an active citizenry to function correctly. Without constant oversight and a strong judicial system, the institutions meant to protect liberty can be hollowed out from within. 8. Communism, the classless ideal. Based on the theories of Karl Marx, communism seeks to eliminate social classes and private property entirely. The state controls all resources, theoretically distributing them based on need, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. While countries like China, Vietnam, and Cuba are ruled by communist parties, true, pure communism, a stateless, classless society, has never been fully realized in a modern industrial context. In practice, the transition usually results in a powerful central government that suppresses individual freedoms in the name of the collective. To enforce the abolition of private property, the state must exert total control over the economy and the lives of its citizens. This often leads to a command economy, resulting in chronic shortages and a lack of innovation. 9. Anarchism, the absence of masters. Anarchism is often misunderstood as chaos, but its core philosophy is the voluntary cooperation of individuals without a central government. Anarchists believe that the state is inherently oppressive and that people should self-govern through mutual aid and local assemblies. They argue that hierarchy and centralized power are the roots of most social ills, including war and poverty, and that humans are naturally capable of organizing themselves. The risk of anarchism is that without a formal structure or a monopoly on the legitimate use of force, the law of the jungle often takes over. In the absence of a government to protect rights, the strongest or most aggressive groups can simply impose their will on others by force. Anarchism works best in small, highly cohesive communities. 10. Presidential system. Separation of powers. In a presidential system, like in Nigeria or Brazil, the head of the government, the president, is also the head of state and is elected separately from the legislature. This creates a clear separation of powers. The president executes the laws, while the parliament or Congress makes them. This system is designed to provide stability and a clear leader who can act decisively while being checked by a separate legislative body. While this prevents one branch from becoming too powerful, it often leads to gridlock. If the president belongs to one political party and the legislature is controlled by another, they may refuse to work together. This can bring the country to a standstill, leading to public frustration and a decay of institutional trust. In extreme cases, a frustrated president might try to bypass the legislature entirely through executive orders. 11. Parliamentary system, the fusion of power. In a parliamentary system, the executive and legislative branches are fused. The party or coalition that wins the most seats in parliament chooses the prime minister or chancellor. This makes it much easier to pass laws and get things done compared to a presidential system because the executive branch, by definition, has the support of the majority of the lawmakers. It is a system built for efficiency and direct accountability to the legislative body. However, it can be fragile. If the prime minister loses the support of their party or their coalition partners, they can be removed instantly through a, quote, vote of no confidence. This can lead to frequent and sudden changes in government, making it hard to maintain a consistent long-term strategy. 12. Constitutionalism, the invisible boundary. A constitutional government isn't defined by who rules, but by the rules themselves. Whether it's a monarchy or a republic, a constitution acts as the supreme law that limits what the government can do. It sets the boundaries for state power, ensuring that even the most powerful leader must follow the invisible code. It provides the framework for all other laws and defines the fundamental relationship between the individual and the state, protecting citizens from the whims of those in power. The weakness? A constitution is only as strong as the people willing to defend it. If a leader decides to ignore the document and the public, the courts or the military doesn't stop them, the Constitution becomes meaningless. Constitutionalism requires a shared culture of respect for the law that is stronger than any single person's desire for power. Power is a game of understanding, and the first step is knowing the systems. Subscribe to join the conversation and help us decode the future. See you in the next one.